What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. Anyone who's ever played Warlock in Destiny is aware of how great the Sunbracers are, and at some point have probably utilized their services. The Sunbracers give Solar Warlocks the ability to spam grenades after defeating enemies with a charged melee, a combination that can be triggered back to back to back. It has the power to put up some big damage numbers against bosses, and it can chew through mobs of enemies with ease. And in Season of the Wish, the Sunbracers have become quite a top tier choice, in large part due to how they interact with the new seasonal artifact. But maybe it's just me, or maybe it's the fact that the Sunbracers have been a fallback build for what feels like an eternity, but running the Sunbracers has just gotten boring. So when the season started, even with all the cool new artifact mods, I wasn't as excited as I thought I would be to be putting these exotics back on. So I figured if I was going to dust them off and pull them back out of the vault, I'd go the extra mile and give this build some new flair. And after a few tweaks and modifications, I think we found an extremely fun and overly powerful setup that will make the Sunbracers a much more refreshing build to use during Season of the Wish. You'll still have all the flair of never-ending grenades, but with the company of Strand effects, giving you a significant advantage, and several more weapons to add to your arsenal. We're adding Strand Tangles, Suspensions, Unraveling, and Sever effects into this Solar Sunbracers build. And this is, of course, on top of all the Scorch and Ignitions that you'll naturally be covering the battlefield with. In order to combine Strand and Solar forces into the Sunbracers build, we are using a mixture of Solar and Strand weapons, along with a few select artifact mods that will help these two energies fuse together. So let's look at the artifact mods first, starting with Kindling Trigger. When we're Radiant, Solar weapons cause unscorched targets to become scorched. Pretty self-explanatory and very beneficial. We're also using Torch, so when we are Radiant, we will deal 5% increased weapon damage against enemies who are affected by Strand Debuffs, and that's going to be about 99% of the time. We've got Unraveling Orbs, so when we collect an orb, any Strand weapon will gain the ability to unravel targets, which will create tiny Strand threads that deal additional damage against targets. We're also using Dragon's Bite, so breaking a combatant's shield with a Strand weapon has a chance of suspending that target, which is perfect when we get bonus damage against them. Horde Shuttle is in the final column, and whenever we damage an unraveled target, we have a chance of creating threadlings. And the key point to note is that these are spawned not from death, but just from damaging enemies. These Strand focus mods are going to harmonize with the Solar ones that we've chosen in cadence with our weapon choices to provide us with a lot of additional outgoing damage that's going to absolutely melt enemies. When we are in activity solo, we'll be using Solo Operative so that we get 15% increased weapon and ability damage. When we're in a team setting though, we'll be using Heart of the Flame. And whenever we're up against Taken and Scorn enemies, we're using From Whence It Came so that we get an extra 5% ability damage against those factions. Bonus ability damage will be a great addition to a build like Sunbracers that's primarily focused around ability use. So between these artifact mods, we're gaining the ability to cause Scorch, to cause Strand debuffs against targets, and we're also gaining the ability to deal more damage against those enemies, which will make this Sunbracers build a very dominating force in dungeons, lost sectors, nightfalls, and just about anything else. Since most activity modifiers this season include Solar or Strand, if not both together, this will be a great build to use all season long. So now let's check out the weapons that we're going to be including in this hybrid Sunbracers build. There's 3 exotics that will rotate through this build: the Quicksilver Storm, the Final Warning, and the Dragon's Breath. The Quicksilver Storm will be able to stun overload champions this season. It creates Tangles, which provides us with another ability to use, and it includes its own built-in grenade launcher. The Quicksilver will benefit from unraveling rounds, and it will be able to suspend targets because of Dragon's Bite, and it will be able to create threadlings because of Horde Shuttle. Final Warning has the ability of piercing barrier shields this season. Its targeting rounds already unravel targets, which helps this sidearm put out some incredible levels of damage, and it too gets the benefits of the seasonal artifact mods. The Dragon's Breath has become one of the best sources of burst and extended damage over time, and with its catalyst unlocked, it creates fire sprites, which will help regain grenade energy, and with the right combination of solar fragments, it could even help restore additional health. Outside of these exotics, we're using legendary Strand weapons that feature the Slice weapon trait. After activating class ability, these weapons will sever targets, causing them to deal 40% less damage, and since this acts as a debuff, it will allow us to deal more damage to them. And just like the Final Warning and the Quicksilver Storm, any of these Strand weapons will reap the benefits of Unraveling rounds, Dragon's Bite, and Horde Shuttle. Since we're using Slice in combination with Sunbracers, I find it best to activate your class ability before engaging in combat. Get your enemies severed, that way you'll take less damage, and then start hitting them with those grenades. And once you've dumped out all the grenades, grab those orbs, rinse and repeat. Destiny has become a very unbalanced game in terms of power scale, and it's often easy to lose sight of that power fantasy that Bungie used to talk so heavily about. We saw a nerf to Restoration and Cure this season, so having enemies deal less damage is going to be a tremendous benefit, and only weapons with Slice will provide that for us. And it's really going to help the Sunbracers build excel in survivability beyond what they would normally be able to. We're also looking at Strand weapons that come with Hatchling, so that we can add to our ability of keeping enemies debuffed with Strand effects. When it comes to our solar energy weapons, we have a few solid choices lined up, but most any solar weapon that has Incandescent, Demolitionist, Golden Tricorn, or Pugilist is going to be a sure bet. We have the pre-Astenix Solar Bow, which continues to dominate as one of just a few precision bows currently available in Destiny. This will be a great option when Unstoppables are in the mix, but keep in mind that Ignitions will also stun those Unstops. The Explosive Personality is a perfect grenade launcher to use with this build, as its waves will be able to scorch enemies thanks to Kindling Trigger. Explosive Personality does offer Disruption Break as an option, but its effects do not work with Strand or Stasis energies, so bear that in mind as you're going through your vault. The Eremite Fusion Rifle continues to be a great secondary DPS option if you're heading into dungeons and raids. Ideally, you're looking for Envious Assassin and either Controlled or Reservoir Burst. And even though trace rifles aren't quite where they were a few seasons ago, the Akesha's Dejection will be a great secondary DPS or add clear option, considering it can drop with Envious Assassin with either Target Lock or Incandescent. There's also a few solid performing glaives, like the Greasy Luck or Judgment of Kelgaroth. With Restoration and Cure effects getting nerfed, a frontal shield provided by a glaive can be a great asset in in-game content, and so can solar weapons that feature Heal Clip. Alright, enough about weapons. Let's switch gears and talk about how we're going to set up our solar class tree in order to facilitate this Sunbracers Strand Splicer build. So we're using Heat Rises, along with Touch of Flame. Touch of Flame enhances our grenades, making them as spicy as possible, while Heat Rises lets us consume our grenade, giving us an instant burst of healing energy. While Heat Rises is active, Airborne Final Blows will restore melee energy, and while this is technically designed so that you would have to be floating around, you can actually get the bonus energy when just bunny hopping around on the ground. The best way to utilize these aspects together will be to consume a grenade right before engaging with an enemy. Get Heat Rises activated, and then strike a low health enemy with your Incendiary Snap. And now just continuously throw grenades and hop around. As you defeat enemies with the grenades, your melee energy will be instantly restored, allowing you to perform this combination over and over again. And keep in mind that these enemies are going to be severed and unraveled. When it comes to fragment choices, we are going with Ember of Resolve, so that grenade kills will grant 1 stack of Cure, giving us 30 points of health off of each enemy defeated. Ember of Ashes will strengthen the effects of both our snap and grenades, as it will increase the scorch effects by 50%. This makes it much easier to stun unstoppable champions with our abilities, since ignitions will get triggered faster. With Ember of Searing, whenever scorched enemies are defeated, melee energy will be granted. This includes Scorch created from our subclass and Scorch created by weapons. We'll gain between 8 and 25% energy off of each enemy defeated, And lastly, we're using Ember of Torches. Whenever we strike enemies with a charged melee, we'll become radiant, granting our weapons a 20% increase in damage, and any weapon that's not already assigned to be able to handle champions will be able to pierce barrier shields. And remember that when we are radiant, Torch and Kindling Trigger will be active. Now that our class tree is out of the way, let's talk about armor and armor mods. We'll gain an abundance of grenade energy already, so focusing on strength will be imperative towards triggering Sunbracers more often. Resilience and recovery will be the next character stats to focus on. This way you can survive those brutal attacks, get your health back quicker, and have your rift energy faster. When it comes to armor mods, our goal is to get our super and melee energy back quicker. We're using helmet siphon mods for solar and strand. We're using double heavy-handed mods, and we're using the Reaper mod. These will generate orbs that give us super energy and grant armor charges. And keep in mind that each time we collect an orb, our strand weapons will gain the ability to unravel enemies. After we perform an incendiary snap, armor charges will be converted into melee energy with the use of melee kickstart. With as many as 3 armor charges that we could have converted, this can provide us with upwards of 30% energy. We're already getting a lot of melee energy back thanks to heat rises, but this will ensure that even if heat rises isn't active, we're going to get plenty of melee energy. Super energy and armor charges aren't the only things that orbs are going to do for us. They're also going to grant us health since we're using the recuperation boots mod. And it will also provide 12% melee energy since we're also using invigoration. And by using distribution, collecting orbs will provide a small amount of energy to each ability. And on our class item, we're using 2 outreach mods so that we'll gain 17% melee energy when casting a rift near enemies. And lastly, we're using hands-on our helmet, but we could also just as easily put on ashes to assets. Either way, we'll gain bonus super energy off of grenade or melee final blows. In our selection of armor mods, we'll generate a ton of orbs and bonus ability energy, allowing us to trigger the effects of Sunbracers much more often. With grenades and orbs providing us with health, and strand weapons unraveling, severing, and suspending targets will be a dominating force during Season of the Wish at any level of content. So if you're a warlock who's just gotten tired of the same old out of the Sunbracers, then try adding a little bit of strand flair into your day and see how things go. And with that, I wish you all the best of luck throughout the rest of this season. We've got the dawning that starts today, so I hope you're prepared to be throwing some snowballs. But that's going to wrap things up on today's Sunbracer Hybrid build. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Sunbracers, Solar Warlocks, and the new artifact, and our new seasonal event, the Dawning. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. If you're a new Light Guardian, just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran, just looking for a new home, then be sure to check out the Discord link in the description below and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy holidays and some happy hunting.